So welcome to Windows in Time, our search for historic markers in Jackson County. Our presenters are Linda and Peter Kreisman, and they are going to be presenting today. The views expressed in this program do not necessarily represent the views of JCLS. Thank you. Peter and Linda, take it away.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our family room. And thank you, Rich and Kathy, for taking care of the dog while we're trying to do this. I'm Linda Kreisman. This is my husband, Peter.
Hi.
Today, we're going to tell you how we got started on this search for historical markers in Jackson County, give you a list of all 97 markers that we've documented so far, and talk about a few of the more interesting ones. We want to make sure you understand that we're not trained historians. We think of ourselves as citizen historians the same way we think of ourselves as citizen scientists when we're bird watching. For the most part, we've stayed away from buildings that are on the National Preservation List. Peter's trying to get our PowerPoint set up here. There we go, down there. For each of the markers, Peter has written, whoops, too far, sorry. Peter has written a short description, like this example here, of the Antelope Cemetery. And each of these descriptions, he has a short description of why the site is there, the GPS coordinates, and some driving directions that make sense to us. Let's hit the backspace. There we go. Okay, so if you want to find a marker, just ask. I need to start, since we live here in the land of the Shasta and Tacoma, by telling you of the only Native American spot we have found marked for its historical interest. This place on the Rogue River near Gold Hill tells of the site of the yearly salmon festival of the Tacomas. The first sign that was installed shows the storied chair, which is this stone-shaped the stone that's shaped like a chair down at the base of the falls. And the Tacoma chief would sit there every year during the salmon festival, as Grandma Agnes Baker is sitting there now. The second sign, newer sign that was installed, tells of the storytelling stone, which is sitting there on the ground next to the sign. From this sign, you can actually see the Tilomeek Falls, where the story chair is. The Gold Hill Whitewater Center has a lot of interesting information about this site on their website, and they really have some good historical photos there too. Also, in keeping with current times, I'd like to mention that as far as Peter and I know, none of our markers have any direct link to the Confederacy. There's a marker for the Jefferson Davis Memorial Highway just over the border in Hornbrook, California. And I guess there's a similar one in southern Washington, but Oregon seems to have escaped that movement. Okay, so much for the historical comment. I think Peter's and my search began the day we first met each other in the 7th grade in the old Ashland Junior High, where the Safeway store now stands. You can tell it's a Safeway because these two trees are still there in the parking lot. The day Peter turned 16 and finally got his driver's license, we started exploring Jackson County together. That exploration instilled in both of us a love of finding all the nooks and crannies of the mountains and valleys around us. We graduated from Ashland High School in 1961 and left the valley to live our life together. When we came back home 50 years later in retirement, we were eager to revisit our favorite spots and find new ones. So we decided to investigate stories we had heard as kids of a railroad tunnel somewhere around Buck Rock. Supposedly, it had been started to be excavated from both ends by Chinese working for the Oregon and California Railroad Company. It was planned to be over 1,600 feet long, but it was abandoned in 1884 when the company went bankrupt, and it was only a few hundred feet completed at both ends. The new company chose this, let me see, where's my marker? Chose this shorter, steeper route where the railroad now goes. And this longer, less steep route was left as it was, with the Buck Rock Tunnel right here abandoned as the Chinese left it. The first place we asked how to find this seemingly mythical tunnel was the Southern Oregon Historical Society, of course. They could not help us find the tunnel, but they did have this 1966 Medford Mail Tribune article written by Marjorie O'Hara that talked about how a local rancher had taken her to the tunnel. So now we knew it really did exist. So we started walking all the old roads around Buck Rock, dragging whatever relative with us that we could talk into it. We finally found the west end of the tunnel, but it took longer to find the east end. Peter and his brother Richard scrambled up over the top of the entrance here and found a rattlesnake, but they didn't find any tunnel entrance. A group of us went once with a woman who thought she could find it, but after a couple of miles, she declared herself lost, and we turned around and Pete and I took the group to the west end. But later, Pete and I did go back when we had more time, and we found the east end. You can see why it's a little harder to find. This is the end of the trail, and you have to just go searching in the hillside there. And the entrance is partially collapsed. But when you get up there and look in, it really is pretty spectacular. So imagine our surprise when after all this, we finally found both ends, and at each end, there was a permanent marker erected by the Southern Oregon Historical Society. This is the one at the west end, and this is the one at the east end. So now here was another mystery. Another excuse we found for exploring Jackson County was to take up bird watching. And here are a few pictures of our local birds. While doing this, we found another SOHS marker near Songer Gap by Immigrant Lake that spoke of old trails and roads that went by there. As you can see, these markers are really durable, being made of railroad rails painted yellow and with an engraved plaque that really holds up well. This one was installed in 1976, and you can see it's still really legible. Trails West has actually put markers like this all over the western US along different routes of the Oregon Trail. So these two discoveries whetted our interest in finding more of these SOHS markers, but we didn't make much progress until one day we were on Old Highway 99 with Jeff LaLand and Larry and Peg and other people, and we saw a marker for the Siskiyou Mountain Wagon Road. After Jeff mentioned the name Mark Lawrence to us, Peter found a document that Mark wrote in 1979, giving detailed directions to the 9 marker that he and his Trails Committee erected along the Applegate Trail. Later, Peter found a 1982 description Mark wrote of markers along the Siskiyou Mountain Wagon Road, at Buck Rock Tunnel, and at various bridges and ferry sites. But even as Mark wrote precise directions to all the other markers, he only said to find someone who knows to take you to Buck Rock Tunnel. Even with Mark's excellent directions, it was amazing how hard it was to find many of the markers. This marker, that marker right there, is at the Keene Creek Slide on the Applegate Trail. It's right off of Highway 66, but it was only as an act of faith in Mark's excellent directions that Pete and I scrambled around on that steep hillside for several minutes before we found it. When we did find it, Peter cut back some brush and then erected this long pole, so at least you can see the pole from the road. Various people have cut back the brush there to show the sign, but it always keeps growing back. That's what it does. One marker that's not near any road is at the Denny Creek Slide on the Applegate Trail. This is the most easternmost marker for the trail in Jackson County, and then they go into Klamath. We finally found this marker by comparing pictures of the horizon. This horizon right here and this tree right here. This picture is from a 2011 book by Jean Pierce and Dave Blanchard. And when we saw that picture and we compared it with pictures we'd taken when we thought we were close, we went back and lo and behold, there was the marker along the ridge line going down into Jenny Creek. This walk into Jenny Creek is really beautiful. And with a little imagination, you can even see some rope burns on the ropes on the trees where they put the ropes to lower the wagons down into the creek. Alice Mullally helped us find this delightful marker for the Birdseed Spring on Highway 99 between Gold Hill and Rogue River. It is also difficult to find, partly because the spring, which was over here, has been filled in for safety reasons, and partly because the plaque itself is pretty little. There it is, right there. And you can see it closer here. It's still got this really great pole out there, and it'd be nice if there were a sign put up so people could maybe see the marker. This marker was funded by a statewide contest in 1935-39 to beautify the roadside. We did our best to clean it up, the plaque up a bit, so that you can see Mount McLaughlin there and the stagecoach and read the poem. Traveler, here is hill water. They drank from this spring, the pioneers, as you drink now. And here their oxen rested, December 12, 1937. Two markers we've had to document twice. These are the Daughters of the American Revolution markers at the site of the 1853 Table Rock Treaty between Joseph Lane and the Rogue River Indians, and it's out by Table Rock. The other marker is on the old stage road near Jacksonville. This 1939 picture of the dedication shows Tom Burnett, who was the last living stagecoach driver at the time. Wonder if he always looked that happy, huh? When we first found these markers, their brass plaques had been removed, stolen, probably for the value of the brass in the plaques. So we went back after the DAR replaced them with these engraved stones. Hopefully these will last. I mentioned that the SOHS rail markers are very durable, but a couple of them have been uprooted and one of these has disappeared. This marker for the old military road, which went from Jacksonville to Fort Klamath, this marker at the junction of Obenchain Road and 140 had been uprooted and was lying in the bushes at the edge of the road when we first found it. Now even that has disappeared. And then this other marker, which is also on the old military road up by the Twin Ponds, you can see the remnant of the old military road, and there are lots of stretches of the old military road along here if you look carefully. So the marker is still there, but somebody has unbolted the plaque and taken it home for a souvenir. The west side marker for the Kennedy Ferry and Shady Cove was covered over with a wooden lattice and this no parking sign when we first saw it. But we talked to the residents there about the sign, and I think it's uncovered now. Then for that same ferry on the other side of the river, the marker had been uprooted and was lying in the grass when we last saw it. Several people have helped with our search. Rick Rohrbaugh, AKA Fireman Rick, has pointed us to a couple of Siskiyou Mountain Wagon Road and Old Military Road markers that were put up after Mark wrote his directions. And of course, Jeff Leland and Ben Truey have been really helpful. But sometimes we only find markers by asking locals when we know we're close. One of these was the cemetery at Rancheria Prairie near Butte Falls. We thought we were close, but there was a locked gate. So we went back to town and started asking around. The waitress at the cafe said her husband knew all about it. So when we found him cooking dinner at home, he said it was fine to climb over the gate and go on in. Of course, when we did this, and we were happily taking all these pictures you see here, the ranch foreman came out on his ATV to ask us what the heck we thought we were doing. But he was really nice about it, and we had a good conversation. This site is marked on your list as being on private land. You can see that they do a good job of keeping it fenced, probably to keep their cattle away from these grave sites. But the sign could use a little refreshing. It says Rancheria Massacre, April 1859, although it could have been 1856, 57. I don't know. We've read different things. And then it has the names of the 5 men who are buried there. The search party found a grave for these 4 men in the spring when they came up and finally found something but Eli Ledford's body was found a distance away by the spring. It's still a mystery whether these men were murdered by Indians or by whites, but there is a story about the 50-cent pieces that Eli Ledford carried with him. It seems like in the process of his being murdered, they got scattered, and for years, people would find these 4-bit pieces in a nearby creek after the spring floods. So now that creek is named 4-Bit Creek. Even when a marker is in a very public space, it's sometimes almost invisible. For instance, the marker for Evans Ferry and Rogue River is right there in the rest area by this new bridge, but it wasn't until I'd gone into the information booth there to ask the volunteer who knew nothing of such a marker that we walked out and my older brother and I saw it right there in front of our parked car. This invisibility is one of the things that makes our search so much fun for us, but it also makes us feel that the markers need to be documented in some more modern, accessible way. So with his pictures, and he has several pictures of each marker, Pete has written directions that seem clear to us in the GPS coordinates. And our wonderful SOHS webmaster, Pat Harper, has done these story maps on the historical home website. If you go there, you'll see a tab for exhibits. And if you click on it, there's a drop-down menu that has both the SOH historical markers and additional markers. And these are story maps, so you can see where the markers are in the county. Each of our information is available at the History Library. So you can mail the library, or you can email them, or you can call us, or you can come in to 106 South Central in Medford and talk to us there. But until you do that, Peter will give you an overview of more of these historical markers.
Yeah, I did want to mention that when Pat had put together these story maps, we had about 50 markers, and so that's what's included on the story maps. And we've since added another 47, and we have several more. We're going to keep expanding the list. So we put together a summary document. There's 2 pages shown here and 2 pages on the next slide. This will be available if you email library@sohs.org. We can email you the Word document. Also, I'll just leave this here for a minute. We had divided things up, our 97 markers, into basically some transportation categories, town sites and cemeteries, the military, Native American, and mining, agriculture, law enforcement, local and individual donations, and recreation. When the recording is available on YouTube, you could pause at these points and take screen prints of these and print them out for yourself if you don't want to contact the library. But we've listed each of our markers here, and each of those is represented by a series of photographs and also the document that Linda's talked about. So I put together a county map, Jackson County, and there's 97 stars on this. You can see that the majority of the markers we found are on in towns, Ashland, Medford, Jacksonville, and along the transportation routes. But Linda will sketch the roads. We've indicated 4 roads. The Applegate Trail, also known as the Southern Route, has 17 markers in Jackson County representing it. The road came in from Klamath Falls. It was a one-way road. Because of the slides, you could not go east on it. You could only go west. But it came through Ashland and then follows what is now the route of Highway 99 and Interstate 5 to head up to the Willamette Valley. The other road is the old stage road. Linda showed you one of the markers being put in by the DAR. There are 3 markers on that road from Jacksonville, kind of over towards Rogue River. The Siskiyou Mountain Wagon Road, heading south from Ashland, has 7 markers on it. And the old military road, the 1863, the earliest version of the military road used to supply Fort Klamath from Jacksonville, has 3 markers. And they're the furthest out there to the northeast. There are 4 remaining covered bridges in Jackson County. We don't need to point to them, but they're kind of out and a little more removed from the towns. There's the McKee Bridge, the Weimer Bridge, which collapsed and was rebuilt, the Lost Creek Bridge, and the Antelope Creek Bridge, which now has been moved to Eagle Point. There are 6 bridge and ferry sites all along the Rogue River, beginning from Shady Cove and going down to the town of Rogue River. There's a family represented by 2 markers. The Hartman family was involved in bridge building. Jason Hartman, the father, built the McKee Bridge, the McKee Covered Bridge, with his 2 sons. And the sons continued on. Wes and Lyle Hartman continued and spent their careers building bridges in Jackson County. There are 2 markers commemorating their work on 2 bridges in the county. We found 5 markers related to railroads. Linda has already talked about the 2 at the Buckrock Tunnel. In addition, there are 2 markers on A Street in Ashland commemorating the December 17th, 1887 driving of the Golden Spike, when Oregon was linked to California by rail and thus to the rest of the country. There's also a marker in Jacksonville commemorating the Rogue River Valley Railroad, which linked Jacksonville to Medford from 1891 until 1925. There are 3 airport markers on our list. The Newell Barber Field, the marker is in the Rogue Federal parking lot in South Medford, where the field ended. It was in operation from 1920 to 1929, and apparently it was the first public airport in the state of Oregon. The Medford Municipal Airport began operation in 1929. Several plaques are located in an area to the left of the main terminal, in front of the military jet mounted on a stanchion. The plaque for the original 1929 terminal lists Frank Clark, a noted architect, as the architect for the project. And then in Ashland, the Ashland Municipal Airport, located on Dead Indian Memorial Road, was dedicated in 1968. For town sites and cemeteries, we have 9 markers in that category, and we're showing 4 here. Of course, there are many, many cemeteries in Jackson County, but we're only showing, including ones that have plaques associated with them. The 2 town sites shown here are the Dardanelles and near Gold Hill, and then Rouge town site also has a plaque, and the Logtown and Sterlingville cemeteries, which are in the Applegate. For the category of military and Native American, Linda has already mentioned the 2 Takelma sites on the Rogue River near Gold Hill and the Table Rock Treaty site. This slide shows the markers for 3 forts in the county, all of which were established during the Rogue River Indian Wars of the mid-1850s. Fort Lane, which was established in 1853, the same time as the signing of the Table Rock Treaty, is on Gold Ray Road between Central Point and Gold Hill near the Rogue River. Fort Birdseed, established in 1855, is on Highway 99 south of Rogue River. And Camp Baker, established also in 1855, is on Camp Baker Road near Phoenix. For mining and agriculture, we're including the Jinlin Mine Trail on Palmer Creek Road in the Applegate. This is a Forest Service property, and the Jinlin operated the mine beginning in 1881. We're aware of historic mining remains in the Jacksonville woodlands and plan to add that site to our list in the future. The agriculture markers include the Oregon Irrigation History Marker at the intersection of Rapp Road and Wagner Creek Road near Talent. The marker commemorates the first known water right in Oregon, established by Jacob Wagner in 1852. The marker was placed in 1952 by the Oregon Reclamation Congress. We've also included markers for the 7 Oregon heritage trees in this category. I'll talk more about that later. For law enforcement, there are several markers in the county for law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. 2 shown here are for George Prescott, located in Alba Park in Medford. George was killed by Llewellyn Banks in 1933. Also, there is a marker for Sam Prescott and Victor Knott in front of the police station at East Main Street in Ashland. Both men were killed in 1931 in separate incidents. In the category we've labeled local, actually these are the what we call local markers that are not included earlier in some of the other transportation and other categories. This category now includes 15 markers, and we're showing 5 of them here. In Medford, there's the Palm statue in Alba Park. The statue was donated to the city in 1934 by Charles and Callie Palm. Ashland has several, 4 of which are shown on this in the next slide. The Carter Memorial Fountain in the plaza, probably well known to most people, was donated to the city of Ashland in 1910 by the children of Henry and Harriet Carter. It is topped by the statue often referred to as Iron Mike by locals. The Mickelson Chapman Fountain is in front of the Ashland Public Library. It was installed in 1929 using a bequest from the will of Victoria Chapman in memory of her husband, Michael Mickelson. It originally had running water, but no longer does. We grew up in Ashland in the 1950s and have no memory of water being available even then. And the Alice Peel Walkway is another Ashland site that has fond memories for us. The walkway is named for Alice Applegate Peel, who was born in 1872, the first white female born in Klamath County. She became a school teacher and taught at the Normal School in 1899. In 1910, she married Emil Peel, and they built a home on Granite Street overlooking a farm implement business that Emil had on the plaza. They created the walkway so Emil had easy access to his business. Locals also use the walkway, which joins Granite Street to Winburn Way near the plaza. After Emil's death, Alice donated the walkway property to the city, likely in 1949. Alice died at the Rogue Valley Manor in 1968. I lived for many years on Bush Street in the 1950s and often used the walkway. Finally, Churchill Hall on the Southern Oregon University campus was built in 1926 on the campus of the 3rd iteration of a normal school in Southern Oregon. It is named for Julius Churchill, who was the first president of the new school. It has been seismically upgraded recently. Currently, it's the administration building for the Southern Oregon University. There are interesting inscriptions concerning the value of education above each of the 3 entrance doors. For example, above the front entrance is the inscription, "The foundation of the state is the education of its youth." The recreation area includes 2 Civilian Conservation Corps shelters in the county. One is at Fish Lake, located in the campground by the lake and is easily accessible. The other is near Wrangell Gap, close to the divide between the Klamath and Rogue River watersheds. This is best reached via the Upper Applegate Road to Forest Road 20, though a call to Star Ranger Station to check on road conditions is advised. At the right time of year, bare grass is in bloom, and the views into the Rogue and Klamath River watersheds are amazing. Built in the 1930s for recreational use, these are two of several shelters by the CCCs built in the 1930s. Next, we wanted to talk about the Oregon Heritage Tree Program. The goal of the Oregon Heritage Tree Program is to recognize Oregon trees of significance, to educate the public about their value, and to promote their appreciation as part of Oregon's heritage. Nancy Appling has been representing our area on the Heritage Tree Committee at least since the first trees in Jackson County were designated in 1998. There are currently 7 heritage trees in the county. For the deciduous trees, we have included a winter photo bare of leaves and a recent photo showing a summer view of the trees. In alphabetical order, the heritage trees are the Bell Black Walnut, designated in 2009. An interesting note, Nancy told us that the family pronounced the name Bell, but in talking to Alice Mullally and in calling 2 merchants on Beale Lane, I confirmed that the locals now pronounce it Beale. So this tree was planted in 1864 by Robert Bell to commemorate his marriage to Anne Riddle. It is located on Beale Lane near Highway 99, just south of Central Point. The Britt Sequoia, designated in 1998, was planted in 1862 by Peter Britt on the birth of his son. That would be Emile. It is located in the Britt Gardens, which are open to the public. The Hanley Farm Willow was designated in 2008. This tree was planted in 1860 by Martha Hanley to commemorate the birth of her son. It is next to the Hanley Farmhouse on the side facing the Hanley Road. It can be seen when the farm is open to the public. The Harry and David Camise pears were designated in 2011. These trees are dated from the mid-1930s. This is what remains of the original planting of Camise pears by the Harry and David Company. Notice that the trees are still bearing fruit. This picture was taken just a week or so ago. These trees are in the Rose Garden area to the right of the main Harry and David building at 2500 South Pacific Highway, Highway 99, between Medford and Phoenix. It is open to the public. This kind of remote tree they called the Lonesome Hickory was designated in 1998. This tree was planted by Mary Louisa Black in 1866 near her home. It is a shagbark hickory, and she brought the nuts from Missouri on the Oregon Trail in 1865. The tree is located on Highway 62, about 2 miles south of Shady Cove. There is room to pull off onto the shoulder of Highway 62, but no easy parking space. So you want to be careful of traffic. People drive pretty fast in that area. The McCall Magnolia was designated in 2018. This tree was planted in 1890 by John and Mary McCall, or Lizzie McCall, in memory of their daughter Elsie, who died that year. The tree is located in front of their home at 153 Oak Street in Ashland. The home is now a bed and breakfast. And finally, the Tub Spring Sugar Pine, designated in 2012, is estimated to be over 250 years old. It occurs in a grove in Tub Spring State Park on Highway 66, a couple of 100 feet from Highway 66 on the side opposite the spring and restroom. There is no easy trail to the tree. The species had many uses by both Native Americans and settlers. Now, something a little bit different. A lost bit of heritage with no marker. We just couldn't resist including this. In 1915, the city of Ashland signed a contract with the engineering firm of Smith, Emery and Company to develop the Lithia Spring site, now the Ashland Gun and Archery Club, and to pipe Lithia water into the city of Ashland. And they did all these things. Lithia water is still available in the city. The site development included the construction of a pedestrian bridge across Emigrant Creek to allow the site to be used as a park. Over the time, the site was not used in this way, so the bridge was not needed. According to a 2005 report prepared by George Kramer for Ashland city officials, in 1989 or 1990, the bridge was moved to Ashland Airport, Ashland Municipal Airport, with the intention of placing it across Neal Creek to provide a shorter walk into town for airport users. However, the FAA refused to grant permission for the new walkway on the grounds that people would walk across the runway, creating a safety problem. That would seem to be obvious. I think the real problem was that the airport lacked funding to build a fence to route people around the end of the runway. As a result, the bridge remains lost in the weeds at the airport. We would love to see it find some use in a more public space. If you know what to look for, you can actually see it on Google Earth. So a quick summary, who put up markers, some of the organizations. The majority, the largest number of markers, 37, were put up by the Southern Oregon Historical Society. We've categorized 31 of them as local. There were 7 put up by the Daughters of the American Revolution, 3 put up by a secretive society called E. Clampus Vitus. Aside from getting drunk together, their goal seems to be to preserve the heritage, the history of the West, and several other groups. So let's see, that's pretty much all I want to say there. I think we've got some requests for listeners. First, Nancy Appling would love to have suggestions for trees that you think might qualify as heritage trees. She would like to hear from you by email at joy@mind.net. So think of ideas for Nancy and connect with her at joy@mind.net. Linda and I would like to have ideas from people for existing markers we've not included, and also sites that you think should have markers that don't have. You can reach us through the library at sohs.org. It's at library@sohs.org. Also, we encourage you, if you're not already SOHS members, to become members. You can go to the sohs.org website and click on Become a Member. And the advantages, first, it certainly helps us financially and preserves, it allows us to continue doing the work that we're doing, most of which is being done by volunteers. You can receive the SOHS Quarterly, which has interesting articles about the area's history. And also you can see many volunteer opportunities and see if any interest you.
So that concludes Peter's part of it. He was going to say that. But, okay, so that's our search for historical markers so far. It makes for great road trips, and it's a good way to social distance in these days of COVID-19. One of the best things about this search, though, is that it's never over. Peter mentioned the markers in the Jacksonville woodlands that we need to visit and document. There is also a marker that is very special to us that's not yet on our list. This is the marker dedicating one of the bridges on the Bear Creek Greenway. It was installed by our high school classmates, Karen and Sid DeBoer, in honor of Karen Sue Figgis Smith in recognition of her work in making the Greenway happen. Peter and I actually attended the dedication of this marker on the occasion of Karen's retirement. And there's at least one more mystery to be solved. You know how much we love mysteries. These are these 3 big stone pillars on Siskiyou Boulevard out by where the second iteration of the normal school was. There's 3 of them. And the one at the corner of Normal Street for normal school has this picture, remnant of a picture of a man in a suit coat with an upraised arm. These are really impressive pillars, but we haven't figured out why they were put there. So if you know, please let us know. Thank you for tuning in today.